The Starr and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Give your pet the best with Little Bear Pet Supply. It's a proudly family-owned business here in Montreal for over 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their all-star staff have you taken care of with all the top brands at the best prices, and they really care for your pets. Shop online at littlebearonline.com or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. It's Little Bear Pet Supply. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. Back together. I'm Marco D'Amico and Shaun Starr with you. Thanks so much for being along for the ride as the Montreal Canadiens sail into the Olympic break and will finish no worse than a top 3 position after going 4-0-1 over their last 5 down the stretch. Marco, good to see you. But we've got serious business to tackle, and that issue is Habs roster management. Patrik Laine, Alex Newhook getting practice reps in, Sammy Blais put on waivers. It appears, Marco, they have a little bit of a roster crunch. How do you think they navigate these? I wouldn't call them choppy waters, but it's not the easiest situation either.
Right. Well, again, the 23-man roster limit applies up until the trade deadline. And so the waiving and successful waiving of Sammy Blais, who has been, as of yesterday, has been sent to Laval, that opens up a roster spot for the Canadiens. It opens up cap space for the Canadiens, who are now roughly at about, I'd say, 900,000 in cap space. But by the time we get to the trade deadline, that'll probably be closer to 1.2. So why was it important to send down Sammy Blais, as easy as this may sound? Well, it doesn't put the Canadiens in a roster crunch. Now, what does that mean? There are 2 things that are happening here. One, the Canadiens wanted Sammy Blais to play, right? So let's tackle the Sammy Blais situation. Why was Sammy Blais sent down? A, they want him to play because he wasn't getting reps with the Montreal Canadiens. When Alex Texier comes back, very likely that Joe Veleno goes out of the lineup, and having those 2 basically sit there and do nothing is not ideal. But what this does do is that now that Blais has gone through waivers, and by the way, the Toronto Maple Leafs had the ability to claim him and send him directly to the Marlies because no one claimed him. If they were the only ones, they would have been able to just hide him in there.
Right.
They didn't do so. So because of that, the Canadiens are able to send him down. But that also means that the Canadiens can call him back up if need be. If they run into any injuries or whatnot, they can call him back up, because until he plays 10 total games or spends 30 cumulative days on the roster, he could be sent up and down, no problem. Of course, as of the trade deadline, there is a 4-man call-up limit that you can have, and you can't paper young players down and call them back up anymore this season. So the Canadiens are going to be very careful on how they do this. The benefit is they don't have many prospects that they're going to be calling up because they're so tight on their roster. But basically what this entails is that the Canadiens effectively sent Blais down to make room for what I'm being told is an impending return after the Olympics of Alex Newhook.
Newhook looks more and more ready. I mean, ahead of schedule, considering the fracture that he suffered earlier on in this season. And I guess we can tie this in because, I mean, you don't have to be a diehard Hab fan when we talk about the Canadiens getting healthier to a man, that Alex Newhook is ahead on the depth chart in terms of reinsertion than someone like Patrik Laine. So before we get to Newhook, let's talk about Patrik Laine. How would you describe how the Montreal Canadiens are handling the Patrik Laine? I mean, there's speculation they're aggressively trying to move him, salary retention. Would they have to throw in an asset to make it a more attractive trade chip? How would you describe the scenario with Patrik Laine and the Canadiens today?
Yeah, I mean, look, listen, from the conversations that I've had, I think there's a little bit of an exaggeration going on where the Canadians would have to give up an asset to make a deal work, even at 50%. The rental market is basically non-existent. One of the teams with the most amount of rentals, right, potential rentals at forward right now are the Seattle Kraken, and they're in a playoff spot. They currently have Eberle, McCann, I believe Schwartz as well. So it makes it a little difficult for them to try and make a deal work. And I think based on that, you just got an even smaller amount of rentals on your hand. If you don't have that many rentals, a guy like Patrik Laine does become somewhat attractive because the market is so thin in that regard. And so at 50% retention, there will be takers, especially if the Canadians are open to taking on a contract and stashing it in the American Hockey League, need be, or a player, for example, that could be on LTIR. Like
Mm.
I don't think that makes much of a difference to them as long as that LTIR amount isn't astronomical. If they're retaining 50% on Patrik Laine, the idea is that they're not going to be taking on a contract of $4 million because then what was the point of trading him in the first place? Yes, there's the roster spot, but you also don't want it to hurt you from a cap perspective, right? Because by trading Patrik Laine and by accruing the extra cap space that you have between now and the trade deadline by sending down Sammy Blais, the Canadians are opening themselves up to the possibility of making another trade. And I think that's the key that people need to keep into consideration here is that the Canadians would like to make a move that makes sense to improve the top six. They're not going to look for another goalie. I could tell you that right now. Uh, the search for another top four right shot defenseman, I don't think is very imminent. I think at this stage of the year, it's far easier to acquire a winger in the top six or potentially, a player that's able to play wing and center. And I think that's what they're focused on. But first and foremost, from what I'm being told, the reality is that they're looking to find the proper deal for Patrik Laine. And I think there was an article that was released yesterday by colleague Eric Engels where he thinks that Laine has played his last game for the Canadians. I share that sentiment. It's exactly what I've heard. Is that I expect when everything starts back up again. The trade freeze apparently lifts as of the 22nd of February, if I'm not mistaken. And then games start as the 26th for the Canadians. They play the New York Islanders. I think at that point we may see some movement in the Patrik Laine sweepstakes because remember, teams continue to accrue cap space during the Olympic break. And so by waiting till after the Olympic break, teams will have a little bit more room to be able to add some salary on that front.
Are you surprised at the end of this, though? Following up, I guess, on the reporting from Eric Engels that Patrik Laine has played his last game, that there doesn't seem to be an interest or already an ultimate judgment cast that there really is no role for Patrik Laine under this current version of the Canadiens?
Not the way that the Canadians want to play, not the style that they want to play. And I think, a lot of people are going to look back on this deal and be like, why'd they do it? Um, especially if it costs them an asset to move him. I think then you really do have to ask yourself the question, like, why? I don't think it'll get to that. I think the Canadians will find a way to either trade him straight up for a minimal return or a future consideration, or just take on a contract to make the money less of an impact for a contending team that wants to take a shot at him. I know there's a couple of teams that are looking to make moves that are looking to improve their power play. You look at the Carolina Hurricanes, Utah Mammoth, the LA Kings seemingly are not in a sell mode, so they still have tons of cap space to be able to take on some salary. There's a chance on that front as well. Like there are teams that are going to still be doing some shopping, and I think I always think back to like the Max Domi trade to the Carolina Hurricanes. It was a last minute thing with retention for like a 7th round pick. Like I think that's the kind of deal you'd be kind of looking at for a Patrik Laine, just trying to get him off the books and put him somewhere where he would be able to maybe rejuvenate his career, or at least land somewhere where he's going to be able to make an impact and potentially get another contract next year. So I think, the Canadians are definitely working on that. They've had conversations. His name is out there. So I wouldn't, yeah, it's not a problem in terms of moving him. I think that you can make it happen. Now the question simply becomes where and when. And I think I would wager to say between the 22nd and 26th of February is when we'll see Patrik Laine moved from the Montreal Canadiens.
I had a chance to ask TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger about Patrik Laine, and his words were, there aren't any teams right now lining up for his services. Is he still an NHL player? Still has the skill set to be a full-time NHLer at this point of his career?
Yeah, I think you could definitely say that he's an NHL player. I don't even think we've seen Patrik Laine play healthy in Montreal.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you do bring Patrik Laine into the fold, I think from a stylistic perspective, the way that the Canadians play, I don't think that they've necessarily built a team where they could have a Patrik Laine on it and play the style that they want to play because, first of all, the youth of this team, the inexperience it already has, and then adding Laine, coming back from injury in that regard, maybe not ideal. I think he's a better fit on a team that's established down the middle with key veterans that are able to, be offensive, that are playmakers. And I think also a team looking to rejuvenate the first wave of their power play. I think the Canadians are fine in that regard with their the 5-man unit they have on the first wave. And as we saw against the Winnipeg Jets, a little bit of a punch on the second wave too nowadays. So I don't necessarily think the Canadians are in that kind of a situation. And then it's also a question of who do you move down or out of the lineup to put him in there. So because of those questions, it's easier for the Canadians to move on from the player. And I think that's fine. Blais made sense, although I think, a player they may want to have around during the playoffs if they need a little bit more physicality. Remember that the salary cap in the playoffs is based on the 20 men you register that day. So not that big of a deal.
I want to talk to you about Alex Newhook in terms of the roster crunch and the Canadians' plans, because when he got hurt, he had 12 points, 6 goals in 17 games, and then he suffered the fracture. I mean, Oliver Kapanen, is on 18 goals. The Canadian second
Mhm.
line's established. What's his role going to be? What does that look like? I mean, I guess the easy answer is Joe Veleno, but are we talking about Alex Newhook, fourth line? I mean, what's the plan?
I really like the idea of seeing Alex Texier, Alex Newhook, and Phil Deneau together.
Oh
What
wow!
a what a thrilling line that would be. And I think even Hank is showing a little bit of excitement there in that regard because
Oh no, he
that's
loves it. Look at it; he's climbing up. He loves it, Marco. You
because
got him excited.
that's a two-way line that will do damage, in my opinion. And I think, if you're looking for a third line that could chip in offensively, I think that's it, right? Where you're going to have that combination of speed, two-way acumen, and Newhook. To me, we haven't seen Newhook play with Texier yet, and I'd be interested to see how that happens because Texier does play that chippy style, and it'll be fun to see them together. But they'll definitely be able to move around in that bottom six, and if they haven't found a solution on the top line, if Kirby Doc continues to play the way he has after the Olympics,
Yeah.
gravy, right? Because then you have two other candidates that could replace him in Texier and Newhook that are hanging out on the third line with Phil Deneau. And I think, you have a Jake Evans and a Brendan Gallagher and a Zach Balzuc at that point, kind of rotating on the fourth line, and you see what's up. And you have a Joe Veleno in terms of insurance should you need it down the stretch. I think that's the best, overall lineup depth the Canadians have had during this rebuild. I don't think I'm shocking anybody when I say that. And if the Canadians feel like they could make a move to improve their roster, in the top six at that point, I believe that it will necessitate or probably require them to sacrifice one of their roster players in the process to do so. And at that point, you see where the cookie crumbles. But I think on a competitive Montreal Canadiens, Alex Newhook belongs on a third line. I think he just provides really good value there. And if there are injuries, he's the kind of player you can, move up in a jiffy. Makes $2.9 million. Very easy, manageable cap hit. strong player and plays in all situations. So to me, I don't think they'll have him on the fourth line at all. I think it'll be on the third line and then move up if need be. And I think once you look at the roster construction of the thing as a total set, there's Michael Hage that you also have to factor in that will probably be turning pro. So when you factor all that in, there's going to be opportunities to funnel guys in and out of the lineup. And if the Canadians continue on their current path, it looks like they may not have to wait till game 82 to punch their ticket to the playoffs. Well, then that'll allow you to rotate guys in and out, and we'll see what happens come playoff time. But to me, getting Alex Newhook back is the cherry on the sundae that would cement where the Canadians are at in terms of their overall depth chart, and to me would be one of the teams to watch in the East going into a playoff run.
Well, we've got lots of time and we've got lots of opportunity over the next few weeks to take a deeper look at this and make up the Montreal Canadiens bottom six as they try to deepen the talent pool, deepen the offensive depth of this organization. Interesting things to come. If you like what you've seen, like and subscribe to the channel. Great to have Marco D'Amico back. Marco, thanks, man.
Always a pleasure, everybody.